Well, well, America, we are facing pretty interesting times right now. I'm Ann Vandersteel. It's good to be back with you. This is going to hearken and reflect back to a little bit of Operation Burning Edge because we are actually staring directly at how fragile the spine of global trade is. And frankly, it is really under pressure like never before. So obviously, we're all paying attention to what's happening in the Strait of Hormuz. But now we're going to focus in on the Panama Canal because that's an area I have visited many times. My guest today has been there many, many, many times. And he has echoed and been standing at the top of a mountain screaming about how critical the Panama Canal is to global trade. But frankly, the critical infrastructure points that most Americans never even think about are right here in our own hemisphere. These aren't just some geographic locations that you can say, oh, isn't that cool? No, these are really choke points. This is where global trade, your supplies, your food, your electronics, your little iPhone, all this stuff has got to go through the Panama Canal. These are really lifelines to the global economy. And right now, about 20% of the world's oil, which I'm sure you've heard that stat a lot, flows through the Strait of Hormuz. This is a very narrow passage that Iran has repeatedly threatened to close and is frankly closing it and keeping it choked up. And the energy markets have been massively impacted. Prices have been spiking. Diesel is well over $5, pushing $6 here in Florida. How's that going to impact the supply chain in, the grocery store, perhaps? So, yeah, countries, we're feeling it overnight, but we're not paying nearly enough attention to what's going on here in our own Western Hemisphere because the Panama Canal is our major choke point. It is the gateway between the Atlantic and the Pacific, and it's absolutely essential to global shipping, U.S. military logistics, and of course, the movement of goods that keep our store shelves stocked and our economies functioning. And we are seeing growing concerns, not just about the congestion or the drought that created havoc in the canal over the last few years, but because this canal is a key infrastructure, like the Bridge of the Americas, which recently, and I'm going to show this to you, was actually on fire last night. There was a tanker that exploded under the bridge and it shut the bridge down. This is a major thoroughfare that goes over the canal. So you can imagine what happens if this thing breaks and collapses. It's going to shut down the Panama Canal because that body of water you see underneath it is the body of water on the southern side that connects the Western Pacific Ocean to the Gulf of America, going through the Panama Canal. So this is a major incident, and this could actually have massive ripple effects globally if this canal shuts down. We're going to be looking at military constraints, shipping delays, massive economic shockwaves. But when you actually consider now, you've got Straits of Hormuz and possibly the Panama Canal and any other choke point that might come under simultaneous pressure, whether there's a conflict or there's sabotage, or maybe there's just a determination to have some kind of strategic disruption, this stuff really kind of stops looking like it's a quinky dink, as we like to say. And as we've been saying that, they want less of us. Remember, they had it chiseled into some stones in Georgia, the Georgia Guidestones. They've been talking about depopulation. Bill Gates has talked about it for years, using vaccines for depopulation and controlling the amount of people on the planet. Now you're starting to see a system that's basically under some kind of, I would say, coordinated strain. And I have to hearken this to what modern conflict would look like. I think my next guest is going to talk to us about that. So we're going to break it down. Joining me now is Michael Yon. You've seen him before. He's all over the internet. He's an incredible combat correspondent. He's an author. He's done some amazing photography in the wars that he's covered. He spent nearly 2 decades basically embedded in some of the most complex and dangerous conflict zones in the world. At 19 years old, the tender age of 19, when he decided to hang up alligator wrestling, he completed the Green Beret training where he learned not just how to fight, but how to observe, adapt, and survive in what we would call the most hostile environments on Earth. That basically has shaped everything that has followed. He was deployed not as a soldier, but as a correspondent into Iraq in 2004. And that was the beginning of a global journey that has taken him to more than 80 countries, from China and India, Bhutan, and Vietnam. What makes Michael different is simple. He doesn't just filter reality. He actually chronicles and documents it. Michael, thank you so much for joining me. We have an incredible opportunity to break down what's happening here in our hemisphere. Frankly, I know you're over in Japan, but America is looking at troubling times ahead, and you've been warning extreme famine and a whole bunch of other stuff, Pampa War for the last 10 years or so. Thanks for being here.
Oh, thanks. And here it goes. I mean, I'm actually in Japan at the moment. And as you can see, well, you've been on that fireball you were just showing. You were you were under the bridge, right? Because we
Yeah.
went down there where those fishermen were. I mean, that's and then on the other side from where that fireball was is where that Chinese monument was that the Panamanians ripped down a few months ago,
5 claws.
coincidentally. And yeah, that's right. The 5 claws. You've been there quite a few times too. I mean that I'm getting reports right now from Panama about that. That strange fireball. I mean, the Panama Canal, one of the things that I've been saying for a long time is if you see Panama get closed, watch Hormuz. If you see Hormuz get closed or the Turkish Strait or Malacca or any of those, watch Panama, right? And just yesterday, I put on my Substack that I thought, at any moment now we could see Panama Canal get closed. And
Yep.
then today we saw that. It obviously wasn't closed. It could have been an accident. Actually, it's not 100% that it was some kind of covert action or overt action, but I did just put it on my Substack again tonight talking about that. But yesterday, see that image right there is that was a photo that I actually took on the front of the construction site for that Chinese canal. So the Chinese canal is on the right side. That's the one that's under construction right now. And the one that had the fireball is on the left side.
Right.
That one opened in 1962. That's the Thatcher Ferry Bridge. It's the Bridge of the Americas. It was called the Thatcher Ferry Bridge for years, and then they changed it to Bridge of the Americas. And it was opened in 1962. In 1962, that was the first bridge across the Panama Canal, and that's Highway 1. So that's the Pan American Highway. Highway
Right.
1 is the you spent a lot of time on that highway going down to Darien Gap. You've been all the way to the end of that highway, and then so that all those people that were invading the United States going through the Darien, they get on those buses and they go up that highway right there over that bridge where that fireball was, and then they end up killing Laken Riley. Right, literally one of the people who crossed that bridge was Jose Ibarra, who came right across that bridge and killed Laken Riley. In fact, we know what bus he was on, and so I mean and his brothers came later. So I mean that over a million of the invaders went across that bridge. But in any case, there's a lot of food and energy that flows through this canal every day. About 40 ships a day are going through now, and 40 is about the max they can do. And but that's a lot, and it's a huge amount of food actually, because a lot of the food that's produced in South America will go in both directions. Food that's produced on the west side of South America can go through the bridge, go through the canal. Actually, if you look on that image that you're looking at now, to the left is the Pacific Ocean, and so that, which is the south, actually it's not east to west, it's more north south. So as you come through the South Sea, which would be the Pacific Ocean, you go under that bridge right there, and then you go through the canal, and then you come out the other side. So a lot of the food that's coming through there that's coming that direction will go to the eastern seaboard of the United States, or a lot of it actually goes to Europe. And then coming from the other direction, which would be the east side of South America, they will come through there and then either go over to Asia, or they go to the west coast of the United States and Canada. So there's a huge amount of food that goes through there, a lot of energy. One day I was standing at that Chinese monument, which is in that you look on the top, it says photos made here 22nd of February 2025. That's where the Chinese monument is. I was actually standing there when General Holt messaged, and he said that some electricity just went out in Spain, and I was watching I was watching a ship come through from China with windmills on it, with the turbine blades. And so I looked up the name of the ship. It was coming from China, and it was going to Galveston, Texas. I mean, you can't even make up this stuff. So I'm standing on the Chinese monument at the Panama Canal, watching wind turbine blades come in from China and go to Texas, and they're putting those wind turbines on it. That's it. There's the monument right there. You were there quite a few times. Yeah, I'll be quiet, but that's the other side of the bridge. You can see the bridge to the right of that monument.
There
150 years.
Yeah.
The locals ripped that down a few months ago.
Yeah.
Yep. They came up the
they're
nighttime.
not happy. They're not happy with what they see going on. And now you see that, basically Panama Supreme Court has said to the Chinese you're not going to be able to control both sides of this canal. They've, essentially said, get out. So, Michael,
Yeah.
let's talk about conspiracy theories here, because we don't know yet whether or not this explosion underneath the Bridge of the Americas, the Thatcher Ferry Bridge, if in fact that was done intentionally or it was an accident. It's just really at a critical juncture right underneath that support of the bridge. So who are some of the likely suspects if it is intentional?
Well, if it were intentional, Masako's first guess was it could be the Chinese because they want to build that bridge or revenge or something, which is I think is a good guess. But I can see multiple potential subjects. One would be Chinese, of course. Another would be, of course, they would never claim that actually. And then the Russians actually could do it because the Russians a lot of their infrastructure is being destroyed. Like there was another drone attack on one of their ports in the Black Sea just in the last 24 hours, and up in the Baltic as well in the last couple of weeks, right? And so and a lot of fertilizer plants and whatnot are being hit in Russia. A lot of stuff is getting hit in Russia. And so it could be Russia. Another could be obviously Iranians, because we're destroying Iran right now. Iran is actually, and as you know, the guy called President Trump is now threatening nuclear combat with Iran imminent. I mean, he's crystal clear about that in his Truth Social that you just commented on offline. I mean, maybe you put it on your X as well, but you can see what he's clear. And some of the Zionists over in Israel are openly calling for nuclear first strike against Iran.
Right.
And so I would not doubt that if Israel does that, will somebody like China or Russia do nuclear strikes on Israel? Not that would finish everything off, because the Israelis, they could be down in Patagonia with nuclear weapons at this point, or other places like Cyprus, because they move around, right? And it's not difficult to do these sorts of things. And they've got full support of the U.S. military. They've got more support. Israel has more support from the U.S. military than Americans do. And I don't say that flippantly, and I'm not saying that hyperbolically. I want to say it crystal clear. The Israelis get more support from the U.S. government than American taxpayers get from the U.S. from the U.S. military or the rest of the government. Our government is captured by Israel. It works for Israel, or it's more accurate, it works for Zionists. And actually, the Zionists are clearly destroying Israel as well.
They are.
And when I say that, you understand what I'm saying. But as you know, maybe 1% of the people can track on that and understand even what you're saying by that.
Right.
But they're clearly destroying
Michael, let's
Israel.
just pause for a second. Let's just break that sequence down, because I think people, when they hear that, they say, well, if you're a Zionist, it means you're pro-Israel. So how is Israel destroying Israel? They don't understand the difference. You want to just sort of break that sequence down? I mean, it starts with the jab. In the most recent history, I should say, it starts with the jab that they were all forced to take. But why don't you break that sequence down so people understand the difference?
Right. Remember, Zionism is a political formation, and most Zionists are Christian Zionists, which is the way I was raised. So so if somebody says you're anti-Zionist, I can say, hey, you're anti-Semitic, you don't like me.
Right.
That'll throw them for a curve, won't it? I mean, that's the way I was raised as a Christian Zionist, right? I have to start throwing that at them. Who's the biggest Zionist here?
Right.
I'm not, I can tell you that. And but that's a political. Actually, I've got a book up here. I have to get up. I have to get these earphones out and get it.
That's okay.
But it's hold on. I'll get it. Hold on.
Yeah, I get it. I mean, this is an important conversation. This is the kind of stuff that gets you banned on every single platform because people don't articulate it clearly.
Here we go.
Yeah.
There we go.
Put your earbuds in, Michael. I was saying, Michael, this is the kind of stuff, this conversation is what gets you banned on platforms if you don't articulate clearly to whom you're referring as to what they represent. Because people lump it all into anti-Semitism. I have lots of Jewish friends. I'm not anti-Semitic at all. I'm anti anybody who doesn't like humanity.
I didn't even mention Jews. I'm talking about Zionists.
Right.
I'm talking about Zionists. So here's Zionists. Zionists have been killing Jews for a long time. And Zionists worked very closely with Nazis to get Jews over in Palestine, right? They worked very hard to do that. This is 51 documents, Zionist collaboration with Nazis. Anyway, The Zionists, in fact, the Zionists killed. It might be the first known assassination from a Zionist to a Jew. Happened, I think, in 1924. Is that right? When the Zionists assassinated the Dutch, a Dutch Jew in Palestine. I think it was 1924, maybe
I'll have
22.
to fact check the
Anyway,
date on that, but I will while you're talking.
yeah, I mean the Zionists and Jews have been killing each other for a long time. In fact, you can see newspaper articles where Jewish partisans are killing Zionists in World War II. You know what I mean? They're slaughtering each other, and
Yep.
so, and they still do. In fact, Zionists and
1924. You're
Jews.
right.
Was it 24? They've been slaughtering each other for a long time. It was a Dutch. Was he a poet? It was a Dutch Jew.
Jew and anti-Zionist activist Jacob Israel Dahan was assassinated by a Zionist paramilitary organization, Haganah, in 1924. He was killed on June 30th in Jerusalem, making the first political murder in the Jewish community of Mandatory Palestine.
There you go.
Mhm.
But actually, I think the Zionists and Jews started killing each other. I think in the 1800s. Actually, it goes back further than that.
Mm.
But I mean, we could talk for hours about that. But it's quite
Yeah, no, we want to stay
fascinating.
on topic
But
here.
let's stay on topic. But as you know, Mayakovsky is the prime minister. Is he alive? Six-finger guy. Mayakovsky. This is a book written by his father, by the way. Mayakovsky. That's his dad. Benzian. It's on
Mhm.
the Inquisitions. In fact, he went to Netanyahu. Well, his name is Mayakovsky. He went to Palestine in about 1920 is when he started calling himself Netanyahu, roughly in 1920, because his name was Mayakovsky. So his grandfather's name was Mayakovsky. He was a rabbi in Russia, and then this guy, the father of the current six-fingered man, was born in Warsaw. So that's
Right.
Benzian, not Benjamin, but Benzian. And
Mileikowski is also related to Mile in Argentina, which is interesting because they've just now said they're going to be accepting 300 Jews from Israel into Argentina. 300,000.
300,000. Yeah.
300,000. Yeah.
Yeah. We went down there. Masako and I went down there and looked at that about a year and a half ago or so. And and as you know, Buenos Aires is it's one of the biggest Jewish cities in the world, actually.
Mhm.
I mean,
Beautiful city.
Tel Aviv, I think, might be number one, and New York number two. I think Buenos Aires might be number three. So I mean, it's quite because a lot of the Nazis ran down there after World War II, and actually a lot of Zionists and a lot of Jews as well were Nazis. So I mean, it's not popular. It's just a 100% fact. 100% fact. It is just a fact that many Jews were Nazis. It's like you just can't get around it. You just can't get around the reality of it. And so, I mean, the point is that it's very mixed up. And right now, those people in Israel, some of them they openly want this war with Iran that's clearly pushing famine. They've been working on famine for years. Those are the people behind Nord Stream blowing up. Those are the people behind this attacks on food supply and so many other things that are going on. We're going into famines. We've been warning about it for 6 years now, and I think that they thought they would put us into famine in the 2020 or 2021. I think that they thought that they could do it, but they didn't pull it off. And now they're coming back for it with full force. And so it's quite serious, as you can see, because what's happening in the Middle East is complete destruction of that infrastructure. It's not like they just, like Nord Stream, they didn't just turn off the switch, they destroyed it. And the same with Groningen gas field, they capped it off, like really damaged it badly. So and a lot of the nuclear plant that the Germans destroyed in Bavaria some months ago, and they had a big live stream. They brought everybody out. Look, we're destroying the nuke plant, and they blew it up. Right? I mean, or the cold fire plants in the United States being destroyed, that sort of thing. So I mean, they're destroying the actual. When this music stops, or as it kind of fades down, there's going to be so many people without food, and there's not going to be any rescue, period.
Right.
And that's going to cause a lot of human osmotic pressure, that push and the pull of migration. This is why you and I went to Darien multiple times warning, if we get into famine, if and when is the way I've always been putting it, that human osmotic pressure will allow hundreds of millions of people to come into the United States. It just
right.
can be, and Europe as well. We're not, and I said so many times, what we've seen now, they're just laying the pipe. They're just laying the pipeline. Like Trump never took down any of those NGOs. They're still there. They're operating.
The NGOs that are in Panama that are, we've been to what we called the city of Satan, the Great Satan.
Yeah.
The former SOCOM army base, which is now being run and taken over by the United
U.S.
Nations.
Army South. U.S. Army South
What did I say?
headquarters. Yeah.
Yeah. US Army South
SOCOM. But U.S. Army South headquarters.
South Command. I'm sorry, I misspoke. But
they call
it
Ciudad del Saber. Yeah.
Correct.
They call it,
City of Knowledge. We call it the Great Satan. But they've got dozens and dozens of NGOs that are being financed through our U.S. tax dollars, because we're the largest funder for the United Nations that's routing that money through IOM and a whole host of other NGOs down there. And when we were last there, Michael, we saw, that they were still expanding these migrant camps in the Darien Gap. And they were building more migrant camps away from the actual Darien, from the Embera Indian that are living there, because they didn't want these people there. So it's very interesting. They haven't slowed down. They don't plan on slowing down. And I think they're just waiting. And we've now had a precedent set where I'm hearing an echo again for some reason, Michael. I'm sorry. I don't know if it's your earphones or whatever is picking up through the mic.
Oh, maybe it's coming through there.
It
Okay.
might be coming through the earbuds. But anyhow, the point I'm making, that's better. Thank you. The point I'm making is we know that they're laying in wait so that the next administration, because President Trump is going to lose the midterms. It's very obvious we're losing the midterms. We're going to probably see him impeached, and we're going to have the stage set for a radical leftist for the next election. And they'll just open the borders right up. And that will, I think, take us to hundreds of millions of illegals flooding in,
Right. As you well know, it's the same team. It's like it's the same thing. It's kayfabe. And so the thing is if Americans don't stand up and be American, we're just going to die. That's it. The country will be killed. That's it. Just like I'm seeing happen in Europe. We've been all over Europe, and it's clearly dying. Yeah. And I've spent more than 7 years in Europe now. I've seen it quite a lot. And in fact, Masako and I, we just spent more than a month with Catherine Austin Fitz in Netherlands, and then we went up to Norway. We went to Hamburg, Germany. We went to Hamburg because that's the biggest port in Germany. It's the third biggest in Europe, and we spent about 10 days in Hamburg researching that. Then we went to Sweden, because Sweden's on the Baltic, of course, not far from Nord Stream. And then we, spent quite a bit of time up there. And then we were with David Webb and some others. Then we went to Norway, and a Japanese team flew in and met us there. And we met with a maritime expert, and we're talking about places like the Danish Strait. That's why we were up there. Then we flew to Denmark. And why am I saying this? Because we're going to these places that we know are going to be part of this war. We were at Denmark at the Danish Strait. The Danish Strait is very important, and it's not far again from Nord Stream that was blown up. And then just like about 10 days ago or so, how long ago was it? Maybe 10 days ago or so, there was a drone strike on Russian ports in the Baltic, which is where the pipelines Nord Stream 1 and 2 actually begin. Were those two the energy facilities were just blown up, right? That's why we were up. The Baltic is very, very important, and so they're clearly going to go for closing that off, and so that's that. So I'm imagining as this unfolds, there's going to be some interruption at the Baltic, and there's going to be possible interruption at Hamburg and at Antwerp and at Rotterdam, Panama, of course, Strait of Gibraltar, the Turkish Straits, Bosphorus, let's say, and Suez and Bab el-Mandeb, obviously Hormuz is, but actually the Iranians haven't closed Hormuz, and they keep saying open the Strait of Hormuz. It's actually wide open, and and then of course Malacca. Malacca is very important, and I do anticipate something's going to happen at Malacca as well. Now you look there where you're looking now. Now for years I've warned about that. I went over there and looked in 2014 actually, and go ahead.
Turkey is really the wild card here, right? It doesn't like Israel. They are trying to maintain, symbiotic relations with Iran. They are sitting, and plus they're a member of NATO. I mean, they're sort of like they've got sort of a personality disorder if you think about it. And they're sitting on a critical infrastructure to move to move supply chains. I mean, that strait is really critical.
It's not the Turkish that want to close it, actually.
No.
But the like, for instance, apparently the Kurds did a strike recently on the Black Sea side using apparently drones. But there's a lot of fertilizer that flows through there,
Right,
from Russia and from Ukraine. And in fact, it was when I flew some years ago, maybe 4 or 5 years ago, from Ireland or London or wherever it was, and I flew over to Thailand because I wanted to talk with the former Prime Minister Abhisit, and I was warning him, if that right there gets closed and or the Strait of Hormuz, Thailand could go into real serious food problems. And I think it sounded incredible at the time. I think he didn't quite believe it, but now it's very clear that I was accurate. And I've warned over and over and over, if one gets closed, then expect others to get closed. Again, not that Strait of Hormuz is actually closed. It's just closed for people that Iran, that are trying to bomb and destroy Iran. And United States is threatening nuclear combat on Iran right now, as is the Israelis. I mean, they're openly going to start executing Palestinian prisoners. They've already been doing genocide. Obviously, they'll genocide Americans too in a heartbeat. Well, they have. I mean, the death jab didn't come from Iranians. The death jab didn't come from Chinese. The death jab came from the Zionists, right? Straight up. Trump's a Zionist. He's a hardcore Zionist.
I interviewed a guy, Dr. Tao Brown, the other day, and he talked about how he believed Joe Kent possibly resigned because he understands that the bioweapon, particularly the one that was forced upon the world, where we have 5 billion people that took jabs in the arm of the death cult, it really is quite detrimental to the Iranian population. And so, he believes, and we, now we have the world now knows the United States ran 40 plus biolabs in Ukraine, and Ukraine is considered to be the next Israel. So again, it is the Zionists that are pushing all of this. It's not the good people of Israel. It's not the good Americans. It's not the good Russians or good anybody. It's a certain group of people that believe that they are better than the rest of us, and they will go to any lengths to ascertain control and eliminate the threat, which is anybody who doesn't agree with them,
or anybody that does agree, but they just are in the mood to kill you. I mean, because that's the kind of people we're talking about. I mean, that's the kind of people we're talking about. We're talking straight up hardcore evil. I mean, just by their deeds. That's not interpretation. That's just watching what they do. Epstein Island. Let's say that again. Epstein Island. Full stop. Right? Death jab. Full stop. Those are two right there. That's two major over the top unforgivables right there. And that's just the start. That's just the tiny start. And again, they're genociding. They're going to kill Israelis too. They're going to kill Israel. That's clear that the Zionists are going to go for Israel. I think they're already doing it. Actually, other people are starting to wake up to that. For instance, you see people talking today about some of these things that are getting hit in Israel, some of the targets being hit. They look strange. You were up at Spruce Pine, right, in North Carolina. And as you know, there's a critical, when you went up after Hurricane Helena and all the things that were destroyed, you were reporting back then, hey, they're clearing this land because there's critical minerals here.
That's right.
And right. I mean, you were in some very critical stuff. They just clear the land. This is an old game, right? If Apaches are on land where there's gold, you're going to be in a war. If you're just out in the desert, well, then have fun being an Apache. You're free. But as soon as you're on top of oil, if you're on top of oil or something like that, and likewise with the Israelis, they're not off limits to the Zionists if they're on top of something that's very valuable, which they are, and their function, or if they become cumbersome, or if they've outlived their use, then they'll be destroyed too by the Zionists. They're not God's chosen people. That's just a psyop, right? I think most people by now see through the psyop, and certainly the Zionists see through the psyop because they're the ones that propagate it, except for the Zionists that actually drink their own Kool-Aid. But I think they're going to wipe out. They're going to wipe out Israel in a sort of sacrificial lamb way, and similar to how they did Gaza. But they, as you get, and I've been saying this for quite a while, I think they'll sacrifice Israel, and they'll say, "Oh, we're getting hurt so bad, we have to nuke Iran." Right now, what's China going to do at that point? Now, if you're Russia or China, and Iran gets nuked, you're in a tough situation where you might go ahead and throw everything you've got at the United States. Because I mean, you got to think, you got a psycho on the roof, basically with a bottle of whiskey and a machine gun, and you know what I mean. And you're in the neighborhood, and there's no way to escape. I mean, you have to. I mean, you must think that at this point, the Chinese and the Russians are really staying up late at night with coffee and thinking this through, how to respond if we nuke Iran. I mean, how would you respond at that point? Because you're next. You're next. If they're crazy enough to do that, they're crazy. If they're crazy enough to shoot one neighbor like that, they're crazy enough to shoot the whole neighborhood. So
do you think that Israel went into this war and drug the U.S. along, or made it look like they're dragging the U.S. Government along for this war because their intention was to have their own country destroyed? I mean, where did the Zionists think they're going to go? Yeah. Where do they think they're going to go, Michael?
Well, they're going to places like Patagonia, of course, and Cyprus, Panama. There's a lot in Panama, Guatemala.
So why are they attacking Lebanon then, and why would they want to drag the GCC in if they have any intention of staying there? If they don't plan on staying there, I should say.
Now, keep in mind the people that are doing the actual fighting. Those are the meat bots. I mean, those are expendables. Those are the red shirt wearing guys on Star Trek. They're expendables. In fact, it's a good way to get rid of them for the Zionists, right? They're using their enemies to kill their enemies. So at the end of the day, they're going to places like Pai in Thailand. They're going to places like Koh Tao. Remember, the places that the Israelis are squirting out to tend to be important areas like Panama, and they're going to places like Patagonia. The places they're going in Thailand, for instance, two major places are a place called Pai, which I've been there, and it's a strategic area, right? And the Japanese occupied Pai in World War II because it was strategically important. Another place that the Israelis are going is Koh Tao. Koh means island in Thai language. Tao is Koh Tao. Koh Tao has never been strategically important before. I mean, I've been there before. It's just a sort of island out in the Gulf of Thailand. However, I think it will become important in the future. And I say that because the Chinese, if they ever finish that canal through Cambodia called the Funan Techo Canal, that'll go from the Mekong through Cambodia and into the Gulf of Thailand, and then go over to the Kra Isthmus. So they're working on making a crossing over the Kra. This will allow the Chinese to go right across the Gulf of Thailand and skip the Strait of Malacca. And also there's a lot of energy in the Gulf of Thailand. And Koh Tao, when you know the things that I just told you, and which I've never seen anybody say that out loud because I just noticed it over time. Like, why are they at Koh Tao? And well, I just happen to know the components there. Well, there's energy here. They're building that canal there, and they're building across, through Cambodia, and then they're building that the path between the seas on the Kra Isthmus. The Kra Isthmus is like that elephant trunk of Thailand that goes down to Malaysia, and so that would then put Koh Tao actually in a sweet spot to have actually in the future. It would suddenly become a very important piece of land.
So let's sort of mark out a timeline now, because there's a flash to bang timeline, right? We see flashes. We have Strait of Hormuz, Panama Canal, potentially. We don't know where that's going, or if that was even a threat, an intentional threat, or was an accident. We don't know. But you're identifying and marking choke points around the world that are going to be critical, for supply chains and for prevention of famine and for a whole host of other things. That being said, when you have a flash like Strait of Hormuz and a potential flash like Panama, where does this leave us downstream? What is the timeline to actually see real crisis in the store shelves for the consumer?
Well, we're still eating last year's food that was produced, and there's
Mhm.
still a lot of fertilizer that's out there, in warehouses or whatever. And so there's still some in the pipeline, but as that drains out, and also as just passageways get shut down. For instance, if Panama Canal gets shut down, then a lot of that food's just not going to flow through, and so a lot of it's perishable as well. So it's not like they'll just save it and that sort of thing. A lot of it will just die. The food will rot, and so not all of it, but a lot of it, it's perishable. So, but when we get into 2027, and certainly by the end of 2027, I think we're going to see some serious famines by the end of 2027. And let's see how adaptable people are. But the thing is a lot of the energy is just being destroyed, and a lot of the
Yep.
fertilizer capacity is being destroyed. And if we see something like the Suez get blocked for any appreciable amount of time, or the Bosphorus, that sort of thing, Panama Canal, we're coming 2027. I think is the expiration date on this thing.
Wow. That's serious, Michael. I mean, you're in Japan. You guys are dependent on everything coming into you, except for fish, and even
This
that's
is
getting
not the ideal place. Yeah, this is
no.
not the
It's
ideal
and
place.
again, so where are you going to hunker down? Are you going to stay in Japan?
I'm going to stay here. And so, but it's not going to be the ideal place. I would not recommend that the average person come here unless you have the ability to somehow sustain yourself.
Yeah, and that's going to be difficult. I guess bear hunting is going to become a thing, isn't it?
There's a lot of bears out there.
I
About
know.
75.
We've talked about 'em.
Most of Japan is uninhabited. Actually, I
Yeah.
mean, most of Japan is just empty. It's like very serious mountains, and no kidding, there's probably wild people out there that have got hair all over them or something. It's a very wild country in some parts.
So I want to address this comment that Grace has put up in YouTube. This will not happen. Venezuela, Ecuador, Argentina, Chile, Peru have the resources to help the U.S. Douglas thinks he's going to go Amish. Well, that's probably not a bad idea. That being said, I was recently down in the ABC Islands off the coast of Venezuela. We took a trip down there when we saw fresh vegetables and fruits coming in every single day. They just take the boat right across the water. It's like 20, 30 miles. Drop fresh fruits and vegetables off. They're fishing every day. And everyone's like, we're not worried. We have fresh fruits and vegetables from Venezuela and Colombia. But my concern is the price of fuel to get it there is going to become cost prohibitive for people to actually purchase these fruits and vegetables. It's going to become very, very expensive to live there and anywhere else that doesn't have access to it.
Yeah, that's why, these people that keep saying they're moving to Cayman or something like that. I'm like, God bless you, because there's not a lot of food growing there. Most of those islands are not ideal places to be. Certainly not the highly inhabited islands. Florida native says, we need you in Florida to fight data centers, but you already know the data centers are a problem, right? It's time for men to do man stuff. That's it.
That's right. No, that's right. We need the people to step up and start going to their county commission meetings and start, saying absolutely no to this. And there's so many backroom deals that are going on right now on these data centers here. We have 4 data centers that they're trying to get done in Florida. I know one they kind of were able to slow down, but the other 3, as far as I know, it's still full steam ahead. One is in the very early planning stages, but nobody's doing anything about it. I mean, we're not organized. We're so distracted by news everywhere. And this is a big news story that just happened in Panama because it is a huge threat to our supply chain here. What's going on overseas in Iran and the Strait of Hormuz is a huge threat to our energy, which will then become food supply chain. All these things are major, uh-ohs if they go south, right? If any of these things get shut down permanently, we have a major, major problem. From where you're sitting, Michael, what is the things that people should be doing right now?
Well, I mean, everybody has to assess themselves on their own, capabilities and their own, liabilities as well. Now, keep in mind, it doesn't matter if the Strait of Hormuz is open if all that energy is destroyed. I mean, it's irrelevant at that point,
That's
right? And that's what's coming down. It's coming down to the point where it doesn't even matter. As that energy is destroyed, those desalination plants are. You could wake up tomorrow and the desalination plants aren't working, and you're going to see a huge death toll probably from that, because there's no way to evacuate that many people. I told somebody a couple of days ago in Oman, I'm like, get out of there, get you and your family out right now,
Yeah.
because you might be fine, but you got a baby and all this stuff. You need to punch out, because because when everybody, if that water stops working, the clock's ticking, and there's no way you're going to get out quickly enough when everybody wants to get on those seats.
And this is sort of the domino effect of the decision to go to war with a country where the claim is it's weapons of mass destruction. We've heard the argument before going back in the Gulf Wars, right? We know the playbook. And I know a lot of people are going to get pissed at me for even saying it, but at this point, we know that these people were doing things. I have a great ongoing dialogue with a guy named Brian Gamble about this, and I hear his point. But and I'm not talking about kicking the can down the road, but I think there's a different way to go about solving this problem than creating such a hostile environment where the Iranians have been preparing this for 47 years. They launched all their garbage missiles first, wore out the Iron Dome, and now they're just, dropping bombs at will. And Israel is taking it. And like you said, was this a Zionist plan? It's starting to look that way. It's starting to look very suicidal for the state of Israel. Not really smart, and they're getting it from Hezbollah and the Houthis and Hamas over in Gaza.
The Zionists never cared about Jews. That's why they were assassinating them. They were helping do pogroms. The Zionists and other Jews were helping do pogroms to get people over to Palestine. They were selling these shares. I got one right here. You know where I picked that one up. You were there. You were there when I picked it up, I think. I mean, that's from 1899. They were selling shares and everything else. And they were killing Jews to make them leave Europe to go. And it wasn't Europeans always doing it. It was Zionists, which many of them were actually Europeans, right? Like Maliakovsky's, I mean, those people were from Poland, or Russia, whatever you want to call it. Where are they from? Space? I don't know. But they were the ones killing. They were the ones killing a lot of Jews. Was actually Jews and Zionists, which is whatever that is, and because then everybody starts to argue that's not a real Jew, no, whatever. At the end of the day, it wasn't like we came over and did it. You know what I mean? And
Right.
And the Zionists were trying to get the Jews over there so that they would help secure the Suez Canal. And so those are synthetic countries. Israel. I call Israel, let's go back. Panama is a synthetic country from 1903. We created Panama out of a rib of Colombia, which is also a synthetic country, but we created Panama to make the Panama Canal. It opened in 1914. Then the synthetic countries, the 1922 synthetics is what I call them, is the GCC countries like Kuwait, Iraq, Oman, and Saudi Arabia, and Bahrain, and Qatar, and UAE, right? Those are the 1922 synthetics. And then comes the 1948 synthetic, the biggest troublemaker on planet Earth, Israel, right? And so those countries are synthetic. They're all synthetic. United States, for that matter, is synthetic. The United States is a product of globalism. That's how we came into being, right? And so those, you see those states right there, like where Oman is now, that whole area and that general area, and like in that that whole big part of Saudi Arabia, they used to call that Arabia Feliz, or happy
Arabia.
Happy Arabia. Have you heard that before? Happy Arabia. Yeah.
Yep. Happy Arabia.
All those countries right there. I've got some of those old maps like Qatar and UAE. They weren't even on the map 120 years ago, 127 years ago. They were not even on the map. There was just different names. So those are synthetic countries, just like Israel is synthetic, and it's all about these countries were created for routes and resources. One time you see Kuwait up there. If you go just tiny bit north of Kuwait, I was in Iraq with the British Army at Basra area, and we were on the border of Iran, right? So I'm on the border of Iran with a British captain, a British Army captain. We'd done a lot of combat, actually, but we were out there on that border. So here we are in Iraq on the Iranian border, and I said, how crazy this is? I am an American writer with a British Army officer on the Iran-Iraq border. If you really studied a lot of history, That's pretty Twilight Zone stuff right there. You know,
Yep. Yep.
if you haven't studied much history, it doesn't mean anything. But you know, can you imagine an American writer, and I think he was from Two Rifles actually, and actually the Green Jackets. The Green Jackets, one of my great ultra grandfathers in the Revolutionary War had fought the Green Jackets in North Carolina.
Mm-hmm.
I was actually with a British unit that had fought I said to him at one time, I was like, I hope my granddaddy put a ball in your granddaddy's chest.
Oh my God. Hey, well, my great granddaddy
but
was from North Carolina.
We're
He
all
fought in the
friends
Revolutionary
now.
War. We got it.
But we're all friends now.
Well, I hope so. I mean, this is this area of the world, which frankly, I mean, I spoke to a mutual friend of ours. I won't put his name out there on blast, but what he told me about the troops being sent over to the Middle East is not necessarily lining up with the stories that we're getting, i.e., meaning that we have a lot of military bases and embassies in this region. And these troops he thinks are being sent there to evacuate. He believes we're going to pull up stakes and leave the region. What do you think?
Oh, yeah. I mean, before the first shot was fired, I mean, you know, Masako and I were up in Denmark, and I said, you know, I think they're going to attack between the 22nd of February and the 3rd of March. And I was publishing that. And then I said to Masako, we need to get out of here because I didn't want to take Masako through Dubai or Qatar because I just didn't want to get her in a rocket war, you know. And so we went through Turkey, and IOM was pulling people through Turkey they were loading them up to Vancouver. I mean, they were getting them on a flight with their little IOM bags.
Yeah.
Anyway, and so as soon as we got out of there and got to Thailand, and then before the shooting started, and then it started shortly after that, as I said right then, I published it. I think this could be the end of the United States in the Gulf, and it could be the end of Israel, right? Ultimately, it could be certainly the end of Israel as we know it, right? And I think the United States actually will, at this point, that's it. I mean, we're not going to last there. I mean, I don't see how we're going to last there because there's too much, the drone technology that's there now, unless we use nuclear weapons, in which case, I have to say, if I were Russia and if I were China and we started nuking Iran, there's an extremely high chance I would nuke the United States with everything I got. I mean, every single weapon. I would hit the United States possibly with hundreds of weapons.
But that would be mutually assured destruction. That would be mutually assured destruction.
Because this is the thing. This is the thing. If I'm looking at this, I'm trying to put myself in their shoes, right? Like, this is unbelievable. There's a madman lobbing nukes. That, you know, he's basically a guy on crack up on the roof shooting a machine gun at the kindergarten, right? Do I expect he's going to stop with us? No. You have to think this through. It's a terrible decision to have to make because you know it could be the end of Russia as well, or China, depending on they both must be thinking this. They both must be thinking very hard. Their people must be thinking, if the United States starts lobbing nuclear weapons on Iran, how do we respond? I tell you, I would be thinking very hard. I probably would nuke the United States, and knowing that it would probably be the end of Russia. If I were, let's say I was Vladimir Putin, why would I do that? Because if you're doing that to Iran, you will definitely do it to us, right? And so what do you got to lose? Frag out. You know what I mean? Here we go. Game
is there any merit in the theory that potentially, you know, by allowing Israel to go down, they're the proxy for the City of London bankers, as you know, who have been raping and pillaging their way through civilization with usury for millennia. Is there any credence that potentially Russia is going to let Israel just collapse in on itself because he knows this brings demise to the Western financial system? Considering what the same system did to Russia, they took their money, they cut them off SWIFT, so they can't do banking transfers inside the system, and now they're completely using their own system through BRICS.
Well, if they will nuke Iran, I mean, I'm talking about, you know, if U.S. military commanders. And obviously Israel, if they'll,
because that was originally a British property, right? With the British Petroleum, the quote find of the oil down there, they powered their navy for 50 years off that free Iranian oil.
But why, and actually, if you're going to nuke Iran, and obviously the planners must be thinking this too. If we, meaning Israel/Trump robots, if they nuke Iran, why would they stop there? I mean, and why would you? And you wouldn't want to do a buildup. You would want to do a flat-footed, like, and then hit everybody at once. You would want to hit everybody you might think. And keep in mind, the Zionists want to destroy Russia. And the Zionists and Russians know this extremely well, obviously. They're working very hard to destroy Russia. They've been, obviously, the Zionists don't care about radiation. They've been hitting Iran's nuclear plant, right? They don't care if radiation lands all over the place. They don't care at all. And that's just not how they roll. We're talking about people that have no sense of scale or decency. There's no question at all. If they'll do one nuclear weapon, they'll do them all. You have to be looking at that from Russia's perspective. American military commander that would happen to be, or maybe their wife or something, or husband or whatever, is it's in a position to do something. This is it. I mean, it's obviously there's ways to just not do it. And but if we nuke Iran, Russia has to assume that we're going to do it to them too immediately, and China would have to assume it as well.
That's pretty hairy.
What would you do? What would you do if you were? Let me get the white balance on that thing off. It looks crazy. What would you do if you were Russia?
Well, if I'm Russia, I'm pretty pissed that I got booted by the central bankers off SWIFT and that we kept their money. I mean, France just took the rest of their gold out of the New York Fed yesterday or last week. The world is moving. I mean, listen, you've got all these countries in the GCC that are either in line or have already joined BRICS. They're in some phase of that operation because everybody's understanding that BRICS is really the smarter financial system. They use gold to settle any trade balance debts, right? If I owe you money because I bought oil from you and you bought soy from me, clearly I probably owe you money because it's a bigger trade to take oil from soy. So I settle that debt with gold. That's a sound financial system. This is what the United States and its Western central bank countries do not have. And I think Putin has commented in the past about, the demons basically in the United States government that were involved in the Epstein files, eating children, all this stuff that he's talked about openly on his own, speeches. He's talked about how demonic our government is. Again, I'm talking governments here, not representative of the people. And I say that across the board with all these entities we're talking about, no matter what the country is, the governments are all corrupt. So, and Putin, I'm not apologizing for him. He's not exactly, smelling like roses either. But the point I'm making is they have been harmed. And I think that they're, when you look at the amount of people in the BRICS nations versus Western banking nations, they outnumber us. And if we get shut out in trade or we can't trade, we don't have the manufacturing to support what we need here. We don't have the rare earths spun up. We don't even have refineries to refine the amount of oil we produce. We're still dependent on other countries to refine our oil. So we are doing damage to ourselves, unbelievably so, because we don't have control of the situation. So Putin, I think, is watching us destroy ourselves, which is why a good friend of ours has said all Putin has to do is nothing with the Ukraine situation. Just watch what's happening with Ukraine. We went back to Ukraine and said, hey, can we have some missiles back? Because we gave too many to them and we can't facilitate what we need to do in this war in Israel. So I don't know. I could see Putin being on the other side of the fence saying, I'm just going to watch him self-destruct. I don't fear them because, they know it would be mutually assured destruction. I guess that's where I want to hope to believe he would come from. Put it that way.
Yeah. But that assumes that they are actually sane. And obviously they're not.
It assumes all these people are sane.
They're clearly insane. They're clearly Epstein Island, death jabs. I mean, seriously, what else is there to say? Death jabs and Epstein Island. Either one of those taken in a vacuum is enough to go, that is straight up hardcore evil. But they did both, right? They did both. And a lot more. And so, and obviously Putin and the rest are watching. They will have noticed what Trump said within seconds, about literally doing nuclear combat.
Right.
So there you go.
So this guy here, Mr. Mirmaster, Says we don't have oil, we steal it from the Middle East. Well, you know what? We do have oil, but we still steal stuff from other countries. So he's half right. No, the oil in
Yeah.
Texas is just propaganda. Sorry about that.
Yeah. The thing is,
We don't have refining capacity. That's the problem. That's the problem.
but we do
can't
have a
refine
lot of
what we have.
crazy, we do have a lot of crazy people and,
Yep.
that are clearly in positions of power.
Yep.
And the military people obviously are going along with it. Our military, in my view, what is happening with our military is it's being expended intentionally. They'll probably do a draft and draft and kill off as many patriots as possible if we don't go into nuclear combat soon. We'll see. But if we do, because if we do that, I think it's a change of course here. But you could see, as you and I talked about in Darien, if we have a draft, they can replace Americans in the military with, Haitians or Somalis or Bangladeshis or whatever, and they can easily be used to genocide Americans.
True. Very true. I have to address this guy, Mr. Miramaster. Sorry, I'm butchering your name. Miramaster 1022. If you have that much oil, then why are you dying for oil in the Middle East? Michael, you want to answer that because you were over there?
Well, I mean, good question. I mean, actually, why? And obviously, there's more to it than just oil because we were having a good time just buying the oil.
Right.
You know what I mean? It's like we
Yep.
we can. United States has been quite wealthy, and yet there you go.
Yeah.
There you go.
This gentleman, Swiss Michael. Yep, the lack of education in USA finally arrived in the admin. It's
It has.
not new
It
things
has.
to you people. You've been occupying and colonizing other sense for centuries. Well, our government has. I can tell you I've had no part in that. I think our government's completely corrupt. I think every agency is wildly corrupt. They're not nothing. I rail on this stuff all the time. My audience knows this. So go back and read my X feed if you need an update as to where I stand on this stuff. I think it's terrible. Well, Michael, I appreciate you. I know it's been about an hour and you're in Japan. And what time is it there right now? 11, late at night?
I think it's about middle night 30. I don't even know what time it is.
It's 11 a.m. here. So is it 11
It's midnight
11
then.
p.m. there or is
I think it's
it
midnight.
12?
Maybe midnight. Yeah. I don't even know.
Are you guys 13 hours ahead of us or 12?
I don't know. I don't know what time it is because I've been so busy. I was looking for a clock here. I took it downstairs.
That's so funny. Well, Michael, I give my best to Misako. Tell her we love her. And I'm sure she's probably sleeping.
Yes.
Yeah. Okay, good. I'm so glad. Well, it's lovely to see your face. And I know we've been talking a lot. Maybe we'll be getting down to Panama, depending on what's going on. Maybe we need to go and do a little investigation.
Yeah. Oh, boy. I mean, Panama.
We need to call our buddy John Mills. He was just down there and find out if he can reach out to some of his contacts from the State Department and see if we can get the lowdown on what exactly happened down there.
Yeah. And we'll ask him, where's the Nimitz right now?
Where's the Nimitz? Yeah.
The Nimitz was just parked off there and the sailors were coming ashore and getting drunk and sailing back to the Nimitz. I heard all kinds of stories.
Oh,
it's
boy.
just the way it goes.
Doing sailor things.
Yeah, they were.
Yeah.
I mean, it's just amazing. They had the Nimitz actually parked off on the Pacific side. Yeah, maybe they were doing a show of force or something. Hopefully, we're going to find. I'll take a guess, though. I'm going to guess that the Zionists are going to blame the Iranians for what happened under the bridge. I'm just going to take a guess because that's what the crocodile would do.
Right. Yeah. Cry crocodile tears.
You're right. That's right.
All right, Michael. Great
All
to
right.
see you as
Bye,
always.
Ann.
Thanks so much for being here. I just adore you. Big hugs.
Thanks for having me on.
Bye. Well, you heard it here, Michael Yon. If there's anybody you want to listen to when it comes to geopolitics and the threat vectors, particularly when it comes to choke points, Michael Yon. George McMillan is somebody else I've had on before. He's done a lot of work on Energy Newsbeat on Stu Turley's show. You can go to the energynewsbeat.com and find a lot of his papers there. Apparently that website is getting absolutely gobsmack hit with DDoS attacks constantly. They actually have their own GoDaddy, I think, put their own team up to protect that website because George's papers on this stuff are so deadly accurate. And George is a good friend of me and Michael's. It's been a wonderful resource. So this is real live action that is happening right now. We are in a real live simulation of the world of as these events unfold. And every single thing you see somebody say or somebody do has downstream consequences. And as they say, shit rolls downhill. Where guess where we're all standing? We're standing at the bottom of the hill because these people that are ruling the world at the moment, well, when they make a decision, whatever that consequence is, ultimately impacts people in their personal lives, but frankly, also at the store. You're going to pay for it at the pump. You're going to pay for it in the grocery store. And you're ultimately going to end up paying for it with your lives in some instances if you can't get energy or food. And as in the Middle East, Michael and I were talking about the desalination plants, all those Middle Eastern countries, they depend on desalinized water. You've got to get the ocean desalinized, and that's the water that these folks drink. And as soon as those plants are knocked offline, yeah, people are going to die. That's just the way it goes. Terrible, terrible situation. Hope you guys have a great day. I've got another broadcast tonight at 8 o'clock Eastern, 6 p.m. Mountain Standard Time. Heidi Ganal is going to be joining me. We're going to be talking about the significance of what's happening with Colorado politics. And, while I say politics is local and General Flynn says local action has a national impact, the state of Colorado has clearly been under siege. Tina Peters is still rotting in prison. She's been pardoned by President Trump. The court threw out and said she's, stays guilty, but her conviction needs to be overturned. So it's going back to the original sin, the court where she was actually sentenced, to see if they'll actually do something. Heidi has got some strong opinions on that. We're going to talk about that. But more importantly, they have their assembly. The Colorado Assembly is meeting this weekend, this Saturday. It's a big deal. This is how they determine who is going to be their elector for, whether it's going to be for the Republican, for the governor's race, for congressional races, et cetera. This is how they do it. This is a big weekend in Colorado. And Colorado, frankly, used to be a red state. It has been taken over by demons. California moved in and they brought their stupid ideologies with them. And frankly, they just, are voting themselves out of existence, sadly to say. So Heidi, who ran for governor in 2022, is going to be joining me. She's fantastic. And I think we're going to have a great conversation. But the point of the conversation is to wake up Colorado constituents. So if you're on Facebook and watching this, I really need you to share this to your Colorado Facebook groups. And let's get this show live out there at 8 o'clock tonight. And let's get a lot of Colorado engagement because we need to make sure these electors really need to know with what to focus on, which races are critically important and which ones are winnable, frankly, which are the ones that we have a shot of doing and holding the line. So you guys have a great afternoon and rest of your morning, I should say, depending on where you are. And I'll see you guys later tonight, 8 o'clock Eastern. Have a good night.